Thank you everyone so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Sharon, educator, author, entrepreneur, and speaker, and I am so excited that I have such a wonderful guest tonight on Leadership Matters. He is the director of the Principal Center, where he helps school leaders build capacity for instructional leadership. He is the founder of the online program, the Instructional Leadership Challenge, where he has helped over 10,000 school leaders in over 50 countries get into those classrooms and provide that rich, evident feedback so that we can move professional learning. He's a speaker, speaking regularly at district, local, and national professional development events, and he is a PhD candidate. And trust me, I know your pain. So I would like to welcome my guest, Mr. Justin Baeder. Justin, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sharon. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, I have been following your work for a very long time. While I was a school leader, and even now that I'm a leadership coach working with novice leaders, your work is so relevant. So I first want to start out by saying I've shared just a little bit about you, but I would love for you to give the opportunity to share more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. I was a elementary principal in Seattle Public Schools. I was with the district for a total of 10 years as a teacher and administrator. And about 5.5 years ago, started the Principal Center and made that my full-time work. And that allowed us to kind of move back home to my wife's hometown. But it's my full-time job now to help administrators get into classrooms. And can you hear me okay? Are we doing all right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, so every day I get to, correspond with administrators who are getting into classrooms, talking with teachers, providing feedback, figuring out how to align that feedback with their instructional framework and their teacher evaluation rubric. So it's just a blast. Just had the opportunity to connect with some really great people such as yourself. So
yes, absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
And so, we know that research indicates that school leadership is second only to classroom instruction as far as impacting student achievement. So I want you to just talk a little bit about why you feel leadership really matters.
Yeah, I know a lot of the research from the Wallace Foundation on, the nature of leadership and exactly how leadership matters. I think sometimes we get the sense that it matters because we're superheroes, because, we all know many leaders who are superheroes. And I think, the majority of the people in this line of work do heroic things every single day. But I think the impact really comes from what we enable other people to do, the capacity that we build that goes beyond ourselves, because we can run ourselves ragged. And I hear from stressed out, overworked, tired, exhausted administrators all the time who are doing everything they can. But I think the challenge is that everything we can do is never enough, because it's about more than just us. It's about developing leaders across the school, right? It's about building teachers' capacity for leadership and involving them in leadership, involving them in decision-making, involving them in professional development. So I think the heroic nature of the work is both true in the sense that people are putting forth heroic effort, but it's a little bit of a distraction in the sense that it's beyond us, that we have to look beyond ourselves to really get at where the leadership really comes from in schools.
And that is so true. And I guess I want to start with your instructional challenge, because that was one of the things that really caught my attention when I was a building leader. Really making it a habit of getting into the classroom, because we know that's where the action is and that's where the movement is going to come from. So talk to me a little bit about why you started this challenge, and then all of the thousands of instructional school leaders who have taken part in the challenge. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. So the Instructional Leadership Challenge, I would say, originally came out of what I realized was a gap in my own practice. When I was an elementary principal, I thought I was getting into classrooms all the time, right? Every day I'm getting into classrooms. Boy, I probably get in 3, 4, 5 classrooms a day because I'm an instructional leader and I know how much this matters. And then I decided to actually check on myself. I decided to actually look at my records and say, well, okay, I think I'm in classrooms 3, 4, 5 times a day, but what is it really? And when I checked, Sharon, I was really shocked at how little I was getting into classrooms compared to what I thought, because I was trying, right? I think we all try our very best. And I realized that my trying was not getting me to where I wanted to be. So I started to think about, what are some systems I can put in place? What are some habits that I can develop that'll get me into classrooms? And I found some things that were successful for me. And after starting the Principal Center, I discovered that this was a very common challenge. A lot of my early work at the Principal Center focused on helping principals use the iPad. And of course, one of the big reasons people were interested in the iPad is because they could take it into classrooms with them. It's less clunky than a big laptop or some other type of device. And I discovered from working with principals on iPad productivity and things like that everyone had these very ambitious goals for what they would do when they got into classrooms. We have a 20-page teacher evaluation rubric, and I'm going to go through that and give teachers feedback on as many points of that rubric as I can. Or they want to write this big, long feedback letter to the teacher and have, the perfect combination of suggestions for improvement and compliments and evidence-based blah, blah, blah. But what I found was the common denominator for almost everyone, myself included, was that frequency of visits was the real barrier. It wasn't that we didn't have the perfect rubric or the perfect walkthrough form or the perfect tool. It was that we just weren't there enough. Once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. If you've got 20 or 30 teachers, it's just not enough. So I think my big discovery, my big aha moment was frequency has to come first. I have to get into classrooms on a consistent, frequent basis. So I kind of arbitrarily settled on the number of 3 visits a day. And that seems to have resonated with people. For most people, if you're in a typical size school, have a typical number of teachers and administrators, 3 visits a day will get you around to just about everybody you supervise on a 2-week or so rotation, right? So that was kind of my big push. Let's do this. Let's get into classrooms 3 times a day. And I turned that into a challenge for our email subscribers, ultimately made that into a video course, and that's the one that about 10,000 people have gone through. And we're getting ready to totally relaunch that. We've got a new logo made up, and we'll be relaunching that in the first part of the year. Based on everything that we've learned, all the feedback, all the tips and tricks, people will reply to my email and say, I do that, but I actually do it slightly differently, and here's how I do it. So we're incorporating all that feedback. And I'm just very excited to bring out the new Instructional Leadership Challenge to help people get into classrooms even more consistently and to have an even bigger impact on learning.
I love that. And one of the things, actually, I think it came through this week in one of your emails, was the twist of the note cards. First of all, I thought the note card was brilliant. I want you to talk about that and how, and how you formulated that, because I was like, that really makes a lot of sense. So talk a little bit about the note cards.
Yeah, so the note card strategy is basically just a way of keeping track of which teachers you've visited and which teachers you need to visit next. And at first, when I was trying to visit classrooms more consistently, I knew I needed to keep track, because if I didn't keep track, I was just going to always go across the hall and visit the nice kindergarten teacher who never did anything wrong and was always friendly. I was always going to visit that kind of teacher, and I was going to avoid the more difficult teachers, people who didn't want to see me, people who are farther away. So I knew I had to keep track. But I found that keeping track with a list gave me the same problem, where I would save kind of the toughest people for last, and then, I would lose the list, or, I'd start a new list. So I realized I need a way to keep a constant rotation going. And I tried some things electronically. And we actually built this into the Repertoire app that we offer for our pro members. But just a real simple way to get started is write one teacher's name on each note card. So you've got a note card for every teacher, and then put them in whatever order you want, and then visit the top 3 teachers in that deck every day. And then once you've visited those teachers, put that card on the bottom of the stack. And the really critical thing that I discovered was there's always going to be something that interferes with visiting one of those teachers, or maybe more than one. They're going to be absent. They're going to have a half-day sub. So the first time you swing by, they're not going to be there, or it's going to be their prep period when you swing by. So I found that if I let myself just kind of skip past someone, I would never come back to them. So the note card can just go right back on top of the stack if I happen to miss someone. And then the next day, there they are. There's no avoiding that person. I've got to get to everybody in roughly the same order. And then once I've visited that person, they go on the bottom of the stack, and we just continually go through that rotation. And you can do twists on that. You can write the date of your visit on the card. And then as your card fills up, you can see all the times you've been in there. I got a reply today from someone who said, I do the note card strategy, but I also wrote each teacher's schedule on the note card, so I can see when they're there, when their prep period is. I love that.
Yeah.
And that was my email that you saw this week. It was the suggestion to write the prep period, and then writing their whole schedule was the further suggestion from a member. So just lots of great feedback that's really kind of created a collective set of thinking around how to get into classrooms more consistently, because we face a common set of challenges, right? No administrator has lots of extra time in the day where they are just sitting around their office thinking, boy, I really wish something would happen. I really wish somebody would knock on my door so I could feel, that never happens, right? We stay busy all the time. We get interrupted all the time. And if we're going to make a consistent habit of getting into classrooms, we've got to be very, very intentional about it.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so excited. I just joined the Pro membership. I got my little welcome card in the mail. So I'm excited about that. So I wanted to talk about your book. Now we're talking 21 Days to High Performance Instructional Leadership. And so I want you to just talk a little bit about what can a school leader expect to get out of that book.
Sure. Yeah, this is it. I got it on the wall right there behind me. So the book is a kind of a next iteration after the online challenge. It really is the plan for getting into classrooms on a consistent basis and having evidence-based conversations with teachers that are based on a shared set of instructional expectations. So let's say your district uses the Danielson framework or has some other system for teacher evaluation, some set of criteria. We want those classroom visits to be linked to that set of shared expectations, right? We want them to use the same language. We want them to use the same vocabulary and the same kind of leveled performance indicators. But I found that trying to do that with forms often led to frustration. We'll develop these forms and then we'll try to come up with a system for ensuring inter-rater reliability, and we'll try to train everybody on that. And what it comes down to often is that what needs to happen, I think what needs to happen across the board is a conversation. So I've in the last couple of years, I've come to the conclusion that the most important thing we can do if we want to improve instruction is have more conversations about teachers' instruction with those teachers in their classrooms immediately after spending some time observing in their classroom. And we can get rid of all the forms. We can get rid of not the expectations, but I don't need to walk in with a 20-page rubric because that's not going to help me have a better conversation with the teacher. I need to go in and just pay attention. So the book is all about how to do that, how to have that conversation in a way that isn't just, I know if I just go in and chit chat with the teacher and stay for a few minutes, it's going to be very dependent on how receptive the teacher is. What the teacher gets out of that is going to be a big determinant, greatly depend on whether they want to get something out of it and how kind of on it I am as far as pushing that conversation in a productive direction. And I think a lot of the things that we think we should do to improve those conversations actually just end up making them more difficult. And I've seen it in my own practice, and I've seen it in lots of other people's practice too. When we make something too difficult, we don't just buckle down and do it, we avoid it. So what you'll find in the book is a very, very doable model. And it's one that if you don't get it up to 100% the first time, you can swing back around and work up to things in a following time. Because I think, we're constantly improving as instructional leaders. We're constantly getting closer to our ideal. But I think there are too many approaches to getting into classrooms and providing feedback that really are all or nothing. Like if I have to go through this whole huge form and then I have to come up with just the right feedback, if I fall short in any way, I have to have a suggestion for improvement. And before that, I have to give the teacher a compliment. And after that, I have to give the teacher a compliment. If I am off base in any way with any part of that, the compliment or the suggestion for improvement, then I really risk damaging my relationship with that teacher, my reputation with that teacher, making myself kind of feel bad and look bad, and not being helpful to the teacher. But I discovered from doing this and from talking with lots and lots of people that a conversation is always a good thing, right? We can always, no matter what the situation is, even if there's a misunderstanding, a conversation is the best way to kind of inquire about that, to discover if the situation is really what we thought, if we're seeing what we thought we were seeing, and then to figure out what to do next. So it really is all about having conversations in an intentional and structured way, but that feels very natural. So that's what I set out to do with the book.
Okay, that's awesome. And so now I work very closely with novice leaders, assistant principals, and principals. And so very interested in your whole accent, the interviewing, the preparation, all of that good stuff. And I share that information constantly with the assistant principals I work with who are striving to eventually become the school leader. So what can you offer? What advice, what suggestions do you offer for those assistant principals who are aspiring to the principalship?
Great question. So assistant principals aspiring to the principalship. I've actually heard this from two different people in the last month. Assistant principals who have been told by their principal, I'm not giving you a recommendation letter because I don't want you to leave. And I thought, come on. And I think I would never do that. I think that's wrong to kind of trap somebody in a position and hold that over their heads. But I think the reality for a lot of assistant principals is you're needed in that role, and you're needed for a particular set of skills and a particular set of duties that you perform, often around student discipline, often around operations management. And in a lot of contexts, assistant principals don't get a ton of opportunity to really exercise instructional leadership. So I think if you're going to make the case to an interview team, to a hiring committee, that you are ready to take on a school as a principal and move out of the assistant principal role and into the head principal role, I think one of the biggest cases you have to make is that you're ready to carry that vision. You're ready to carry that responsibility for stewarding the instructional vision of the school. And I think one of the challenges that a lot of assistant principals face is just not having had a lot of opportunity to do that in the assistant principal role. So I have a ton of respect for districts that are intentional about giving assistant principals instructional leadership experience. I think that's so important as a pipeline issue. And I know you do a lot with leadership development and leadership pipelines. I think that's so critical. But I think if regardless of what opportunities other people provide for you, as an assistant principal, you've got to go out and get those opportunities for yourself, and just say, I want to do this. I want to pursue this. So I'll give you a great example. One of our podcast guests this year, Sam, you can go to principalcenter.com/Sam and hear Sam's story. Sam is an assistant principal or vice principal in the Chicago area junior high school. And he didn't necessarily say this on our interview, but I get the impression that he is responsible for a lot of the disruptions, the emergencies, the operations issues, student discipline, all of that. He did not complain one bit in our interview. To his full credit, anyone who's been an assistant principal will know there's a lot he's probably not mentioning there. But he just decided for himself he was going to get into classrooms no matter what. And he, of course, still had to be responsive. If somebody calls him on the radio and says, we need you down here in the office, or we need you to go to this classroom, he would go. But he made it his commitment that he was going to get into classrooms every single day. And I think he started out with 3 visits a day as his target. He may have set a higher target in his head from the beginning, but he did not let that target of 3 a day hold him back in any way. He just said, I'm going to do this every period. I'm going to go and get into classrooms. And he ended the year, the 2016-2017 school year, with 1,173 visits. And every time he would email the teacher, say, hey, great to stop in today. Here's some thoughts on what I saw. He'd always communicate with the teacher. Couldn't always talk face to face. That just didn't work in the schedule. And often he would get pulled somewhere else later in the day. But he said, I'm at least going to communicate. I'm at least going to share a little bit about what I saw. And that to me is such an inspiration because he took charge. He still got everything he needed to done. He didn't need other people to change the circumstances for him. He just said, I'm going to get into classrooms. That's something that I'm supposed to do anyway as an instructional leader, as an assistant principal. And I think as a result of that, he's got great relationships with teachers. He's had great conversations with teachers, and he knows probably more than anyone else what kinds of instruction are taking place in the school and what the school needs to do next. So he's prepared to talk about that if he ever goes up for a principal interview. And I think everybody who is in that assistant principal role has got to find that opportunity for themselves. What is my opportunity to gain that experience, to build those relationships, to have those conversations, and give myself the experience that I can use in an interview, that I can use in a cover letter, that I can use in a resume to really demonstrate that I'm ready. Because I think the greatest danger for assistant principals is just getting pigeonholed and stuck in doing something that you're good at, that's useful to the organization that you work for. But you don't want that to be a trap, right? You want that to be a stepping stone.
Absolutely. Very good advice. And so, you're a PhD candidate, and I just want to ask you, how do you manage it all? Because that was one of the things that I had to struggle with. I just finished just May.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
like I said, I feel your
Yeah.
pain. I understand. But a lot of the instructional leaders, school leaders that I work with, they have the full-time job, they have their family, and of course they're in school trying to earn that doctorate degree. And it's a struggle, and you just have to make time. So I'm just asking, how do you find the time to do all that you do, going across the country, speaking, and still trying to get this work done?
Well, I can't say I've been a great example on that. I've got my degree on my wall behind me. Actually, that's not a degree. That is a PhD, which is you're eligible to do your dissertation now if you would like to. I've done my coursework. Not worth very much. So I can't say that I've done a great job of getting that, getting focused on that. But I think really what it comes down to is saying no to the to things that would compete with it. Yes. So like this book was, I think, I was finished writing it probably, I don't know, the better part of a year ago. And then there were different revisions that we had to go through. But I had to say to my publisher, no matter what I say between now and May 2018, I am not working on any more books between now and then. And I've had 2 or 3 ideas, but I've had to say it's going to have to wait. Mm-hmm. And I know during other periods, when I was in a principal prep program, there were kind of side projects and hobbies that I let go of. I just had to say, I can't do this anymore. This is going to have to, be a part of what I used to do. And I'm going to have to let that go if I'm going to do what I've taken on now. And I'm already thinking ahead to the next 5 months where it's really the home stretch for me, where I'll be doing a lot more writing than I have been previously. And I've made some plans as to how I'll get that done. But I think, ultimately we do have to choose between some things. And I know for a lot of people, you might feel like there's not a whole lot left besides your job that you're doing. I know if you're working kind of an 80-hour a week job, going to school, if you have a family, all those things, it might feel like there's not, there's not a ton of wiggle room. So I think one of the things that is really beneficial about the way a lot of doc programs are designed is that they're cohort programs with fixed schedules. I think those are a great idea. So if you're in a program like that, fabulous. I personally am a very deadline driven person. That's how I kind of make decisions about what to spend my time on. If this is due, if there's a deadline coming up, great. I'm going to honor that deadline. And then other people are more of a plan ahead and, think through everything you're going to have to do for the next couple of months and work ahead. That's my wife's style. That's not my style particularly, but, I think it comes down to making choices. What was it for you? How did you take the time to get it done? I need some advice personally.
Yeah, but that was exactly it. I had to let it go. And the thing about it, I started in another program previously and was just like you, completed the coursework and didn't finish the degree. And so when I started back over in 2013, that's exactly what I had to do. I said, I can't do everything that I'm used to doing. It's no way possible. And so that's exactly what I said no to a lot of things. and I got it done. I even wrote a book in the midst of my dissertation. So so that was fabulous. It correlated. So it was, the same. So that worked, but definitely. So Justin, where can everyone reach out to you? Where can they follow you? Where can they join this challenge? Where can they buy your book?
Sure, yeah. A great place to start is the Instructional Leadership Challenge website, instructionalleadershipchallenge.com, or the Principal Center website, which is my main site where I write articles and post videos and things like that, which is principalcenter.com. And everything ends up eventually on Twitter. If you go to @eduleadership on Twitter, EDU Leadership, you can find me there and let me know you're following. I'll follow you back, and great to connect with people on Twitter. Any of those places are great.
Absolutely. I am just so delighted again, so honored and so humbled that you did take the time, because I know you're busy. But your knowledge is just so profound that I just had to have you on the show. And so I appreciate you, and I just want to say thank you.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much. It's really been great to connect. And
absolutely not. And I look forward to continuing and following you in this whole I'm excited to see what that's all about. So I'm excited about that.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. So guys, thank you all for joining, those of you who joined live and those of you who are going to catch the replay. I really appreciate it. I'm Dr. Sharon, educator, author, entrepreneur, and speaker, and this is Leadership Matters with Dr. Sharon. I was talking to my guest today, Mr. Justin Baeder. And in fact, leadership does matter. Have a great night. Thank you.